And that's where we're starting up from, the collapse of buildings, building collapse disasters around Nigeria. Now, disasterdoc.org says that at least an average of 8 buildings collapse around the world every year. And of that figure, about 343 deaths occur per year. This is from disasterdoc.org. But there is also the Building Collapse Prevention Guild in Nigeria that put it at 271 collapsed buildings, representing about 50% of a total of 541 recorded in the country between 1974 and 2022. So it is not today that buildings have been collapsing, but when they do occur, when that disaster occurs, what happened? What are the causes behind this? And what should be done to ensure these numbers continue to reduce on a daily basis? To help us answer some of these questions, we have in the studio Engineer Deborah Oni-Ojediran, National Vice President, Nigerian Institute of Structural Engineers. She's also a lecturer and former head of Department of Civil Engineering, Kogi State University, Polytechnic. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Also in the studio is Mr. Cyril Nwafo, a structural engineer and a member of the Building Collapse Prevention Guild. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Mr. Nwafo. The Building Collapse Prevention Protection Guild or Prevention Guild. It's prevention, right? Or
yes, prevention.
Okay. Prevention Guild. What comprises this body? Who are part of this body?
Thank you for the question. First of all, let me correct the way you address me. I am Engineer Dr. Cyril Nelson Nwafo. Okay. Having said that, let me come to your question. We have professionals in Nigeria that are involved in built environment, like architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, and the likes. So we came together and formed the guild because the building collapse in Nigeria have been embarrassing us a lot. So we're looking for a way to prevent it of its occurrence in Nigeria. Because the name is given to us outside the country is embarrassing. So we want to stop it, and we cannot do it alone. Anyway, let me just follow your questions.
Okay.
Let me not
all right, let's come back to Engineer Oni-Ojediran. What are the causes? What is it that will cause a building to collapse? I mean, when we see that video, that report put together by correspondent Dari, tells us, we saw the video of how that building came down. That's a recent building that collapsed in Lagos. It came down as though it was a guided demolition.
Controlled demolition.
What causes buildings to collapse?
Well, thank you very much. There are a lot of factors that go into building construction in the first place. And the most important, I would say, is the foundation. And, you know, quite a lot of people take this not very seriously. And some other persons, maybe out of ignorance, do not understand that foundations are different and then are done according to the different structures that you want to put up. So I would expect that in such area, like Banana Island, where we learned that they were reclaimed land, we expect piling and all of those. So we don't know how much has been done. As much as possible, I don't want to preempt or say anything since investigation is going on, but I would like to know what kind of foundation that was put in place and the process. So the foundation, the construction method, the materials that goes into it, is there quality control, the quality of your skilled workers, how much of these techniques can they carry out successfully and skillfully, and then how much are they up to date with the current technology. And then we talk about government agencies also supervising all of this project. how much do they know about this kind of buildings? From 5 floors to like 12 floors mid-rise, how many of these engineers are trained? You know, you employ them. How many times have you sent them on training to advance their knowledge after they came fresh from the university? And some have been practicing for years, but they have other responsibilities. You see how many construction works going on in this country. How many can they oversee? So who would expect that the government agency will want to collaborate with private sectors and the consultants to help look out for this? You know, when you start having such gigantic projects, you start taking serious steps to make sure that they are protected. You know, somebody that will undergo such projects will have the money to provide for this. I mean, look at how much has gone down as compared to how much you pay a consultant to oversee this. So there's a lot that goes in, even the material. I understand the Banana Island is not far from the sea. Where do they get their water from? You know? And once the water is contaminated, the concrete begins to have problems. So there's a lot that may have happened in this collapse.
Well, one would think that for such a site, one located in very prime property in Lagos, that a lot of these considerations would have gone into it. You know, it should be specialized more or less. It won't just be everybody. But as Dr. Nwafo pointed out, it's very embarrassing that year in, year out, we see this building collapse. In 2021, we witnessed, you know, a story building, very high-rise story building, go down in Ikoyi. That was the talk of town because the owner of that structure lost his life in that property development, as well as about 50 other people who lost their lives in that incident. And from what we understand, we hear that about 61 building collapses happened in the year 2022 alone. So every year, it looks like we're learning nothing from any of the building collapse incidences that we witness. It's very disheartening. I'm wondering, is it that we're really learning? Because I'm sure you were very touched. That's why your people decided to put together a team in that particular sector to see how it is that they can prevent these incidences from happening. But over and over again, in spite of your best efforts, these kinds of incidences continue to happen. What do you think is responsible for the continuous repetition of this sort of disasters?
Thank you. Like, I think I can come in here.
Yes, please.
Thank you. You know, even in 2010, there was a building collapse in Abuja here, killing 21 people. And a committee was formed. So during the process, we discovered that what we recommended exactly almost the same as the one the previous committee recommended, headed by former current president, Engineer K.A. And they were not implemented. Up to today, what we recommended in 2010, they are not implemented.
What did you recommend?
We recommended a lot of issues that things that are help to prevent collapse of buildings. For example, even in the choice of professionals, right from the planning stage, the design stage, and the supervision. So we recommended all this, but they were not implemented up to today. So it's like we recommend something and the government will just dump it. That's why I said we cannot do it alone. We need government intervention to carry out our recommendations.
Do you think government is not interested in it? Or is it that they don't have sufficient willpower, or they think that there's very little they can do about it themselves?
there is a lot they can do. You have a lot they can do. It's just the willpower. Eh? If they have the willpower to do it, they can do it.
Tell us how regulation is done these days. I mean, assuming we see quite a number of, major constructions, at least here in Abuja, I'm sure they'll have a lot in Lagos and in different cities. In fact, in the report that was done in 2022, Lagos was leading for incidences of collapsed buildings, followed very closely by Anambra. There are a number of other states that were also mentioned in that particular report. Oftentimes, they don't get heard, until this kind of incidences happen. But if there is a construction in a place like Abuja, for instance, can you put us through the process in terms of where the state comes in to look at those buildings to, ensure that they are safe for people to, to inhabit, or that, they're being built according to specifications?
We have approving
authorities
in Abuja here, that development development control, we have it. So they have to play their own role. They have to play their parts. They have to, first of all, people there should be qualified to check our drawings, our designs. If they are not qualified, what can they do? They can't do anything. They can't do much. They are not qualified. That's why we said that we recommended employment of capable hands in development control.
That's very important as well.
Very, very important. We even went there to see the coordinator to make sure our recommendation is carried out. But unfortunately, the person in charge is no longer there, and the report was not even presented officially because the chairman passed on.
Okay. Let me come to Engineer Ojediran. I'm looking at some of the things that you have listed as the possible issues or causes for building collapse, and there are quite a plethora of them. And you talk about foundation, construction, materials, etc. Now, if you have very good regulators, if you have professional regulators, they certainly will not just go to a building site and just look at it with their bare eyes and be able to determine if the right thing has been done. They would certainly need equipment. Is that correct?
Yes.
So from what you have seen, I do not know how much of practical goes into teaching in our universities and polytechnics, and if your students have cause to go out on the field, but what would you say is the missing link between regulation and what actually happens on the ground?
Okay, so here's the thing. A lot of people, I don't know, maybe from ignorance or from whatever reason, do not know that a civil engineer is trained, first of all, as a general practitioner. And then as we move on, we begin to specialize. So we now have people who practice the structural engineering. And so if you want to do such structures like this, you would normally just look for the structural engineers. And this is a problem we have in the society these days. You just hear that a civil engineer is supposed to carry out your construction work, and you just go to a civil engineer. You don't get to say, ask, okay, so what is your area of practice? That is the first problem. And then from the university...
So it's not enough to just get a civil engineer?
No. It has to be somebody who has been certified, a professional in the structural engineering field. And then we have an institution that certifies structural engineers in this country, and that has existed for years. That's the Nigerian Institution of Structural Engineers. And we have directory. I mean, so you can easily just look for a structural engineer in your locality.
Sorry, if I may just to clarify. So one can be certified as a structural engineer in building drainages.
Yes.
Can the same person be certified as a structural engineer in constructing houses?
By all means, if your head can carry all.
Okay, so certification can be in the different areas.
Yes.
So you're saying that in looking for a structural engineer, you need to inquire, are you a building structural engineer? Are you certified in building? Is that the question
before
you
you even become a structural engineer, you must have been trained in all of these areas of structures.
Okay.
And then you can now choose to settle for one. So if you see a structural engineer, most likely they can handle those other areas. But they may decline based on the fact that they have chosen the path they want to go. But if they want to handle your project, they can still go on to handle it. But once they advance, even in training, they can begin to narrow down. For instance, I'm specialized in construction engineering management. So it means that although I do design, I would like to be in your process. I would not just want to design your structure. I want to see from the conceptualization to how the logistics to every of your profession. I want to see from the beginning to the end and see through and hand over your structure to you. You get it? So there are areas that people want to specialize in. And I wasn't there before. I started from bridge engineering, for instance. And then bridge is not building. It's not building at all. So it's not that the basic principle, the foundation principle is the same. But as you advance, you begin to branch out. And then you begin to branch out. So you have civil engineers who are practicing waste management, environmental, water, and all of those. You cannot call such an engineer if he is not certified to be a structural engineer to come and design your house or your structure for you. I mean, the best he can do is probably take your job and sublet it. And then, he will have to just rely on whatever the other person says. I mean, what if the person is also not certified? So we're saying just go to the directory and get a certified structural engineer and then be safe.
Dr. Nwafo, before my colleagues in Lagos come in to ask you questions, just this one. She's talked about the entire process. When you're talking about who and who make up your guild, you talked about architects, you talked about the engineers, the different parts of engineering that have to be in part of the process of building. Because from your organization, we have this data of the number of houses that have collapsed and how many lives have been lost and all of that. But how do you ensure you prevent this collapse? If you have all of these people there, do they get involved in the process of building? Do you go from house to house checking, okay, in this construction site number 1, who is the architect, who is the engineer? Do you do all of that? Where is the government approval? Does your guild do this?
Yes, we do that. Even Korean does it. We have people that go to a construction site to inquire who and who are involved, the professionals that are engaged to carry out both the design and supervision of the project. Korean has what we call engineering, regulation, and monitoring. So the Korean members go to all the sites that constructions are going on to find out whether the client engaged qualified professionals to handle the project.
And if it's discovered that the owner of the project did not, what happens?
We stop the project. Even the client can be also
prosecuted.
Has
that happened before? How many have been prosecuted?
I can't say the number but we have done that. Okay. Because I'm a member of ERM also, yes.
Okay.
But what I want to, you see, one problem I have with you people is that you come here, you ask us questions for us to tell you what you want to hear, what you want to know. But we don't have the opportunity to tell you what we want you people to know. Not only you, even the other people to know. So I hope you're going to give us the opportunity to tell you what you should know
Dr. Nwafo,
about selection of engineers.
You were invited here to educate the public. Before we came on, and I'm sure I told you that the opportunity to educate the public on the process, what should be done, what and where, who should be a part of the process. That's why we invited you. And so when we ask the questions, is for you to go ahead and be free and tell them. For instance, Nigerians, and indeed our viewers are asking right now, okay, so this process, when you say you want to prosecute, you go to see this man, you don't have the right equipment, stop this building. Then you go away. Do you come back to check? Or are your men shielded from being bribed? How do you ensure that those you send, that those members of ERM that go to check these project sites are efficient? Are they efficient enough to enforce the law? And what happens if the project owner goes behind to go and settle them? Do you ever discover such?
We have not discovered such, because to be a member of ERM for Korean, you have to be qualified. You have to be trusted. Only qualified and trusted engineers are members. Even in the guide. So we have to engage qualified and trusted people to go around the building construction sites. One thing I want you to know is that corruption is the main cause of all these building collapses. Corruption. Because with corruption, you won't select you can misappropriate the fund for feasibility studies. You can also make a wrong choice of selection of engineers to handle your project. With corruption, you can also, in fact, you use substandard materials. Corruption can also make you to carry out insufficient supervision of the project.
So corruption is a big factor.
It's a big factor.
At this point, let's bring in our colleagues. Bukola and Kayode are waiting to ask the questions.
Well, thank you, Mark. Let me start with Engineer Oni Ojediran and, refer to the coroner's inquest, the outcome, or at least what we got from the report investigation into the Ikoyi building collapse from 2021. And, the coroner's inquest was saying that the collapse was due to negligence by agencies responsible for approval and supervision of the building project, said that there was a lack of quality assurance and quality control, as well as poor management of the project. Even went on to say that the building's density and setback on the site showed gross violation of the Lagos State building regulations, but started by saying that this was as a result of negligence by agencies responsible. When the Lagos State official was asked which developer was responsible, this is for Engineer Oni Ojediran, he said that the developer Joe Faraday, as a lot of people would know, is not a new name in the sector, in the construction or real estate sector. Take the Ikoyi building collapse also. Fourscore Heights is a heavy lifter, has been known to be a heavy lifter in the industry. But when you see, things like, negligence, lack of quality assurance and control, this is what you'll expect from maybe quacks or people who are just getting started. So how is it that major companies are indicted in such manner where you'd expect that they will give the very best of quality? Maybe you could walk us through the step and maybe where the ball may have been dropped, because it's important to enlighten Nigerians on that one as well.
Okay, thank you very much. The best of us are still human, and then we all have our individual interests when we set out to do our businesses. So when you see this kind of issues, like I mentioned, that you see agencies that are supposed to oversee all of this have in their employment people who don't even have the requisite knowledge. There is the basic knowledge, But when it comes to certain types of projects, you're supposed to have specialists that should handle this. So when you send a regular engineer to the site to see what is happening, and even if he sees something, and then he is told that this has been done like this because it's the technology and all of those, what is he likely to argue about? I mean, so that is why we're saying they should bring in consultants to help them. They need more hands to be able to do this. And then the second thing that you have mentioned is that these names are big names, and then you wonder how this has happened. And the truth is that there are segments and there are units in the construction works, and then even if you have experts, they cannot be there all through the way. What about the procurement process? Do they have the material testing lab to continually test all of these materials? And if they have, who is manning the equipment? All of this. And that is why, like, we have taken it upon ourselves in Nigerian Institution of Structural Engineers to do continuous professional development trainings to help people see what it should be. Okay, it's okay to want to dabble into another profession and try to do one or two things because you feel that you may not really do the technical aspect, especially the supervision. You just feel that supervision is easy, it's just to follow what we have been told, the instructions written, fine. But there are some things that you don't see with your eyes, I mean, that go on, that are just, that are a result or a reaction from all that things that may have happened. How will you know? You are not likely to know if you are not trained in that area. So we're saying, even if you have to do that, come in for training, learn all of these things, and then so that when you are faced with such situations, you will know what to do. So when you see big names, some people even go to get people's profile to say, oh, please, we need you to be a part of our team. And then when they pull through with the job, they don't go back to the professionals to say, okay, so we got the job and then we would like you to do this. They just get the job and feel like they can read it through. They can read the theory and go and practicalize. Right. And then you keep practicalizing with human lives, real human lives.
Well,
I mean, you know, it's so sad. And I must say that I commiserate with the families that have lost their loved ones in these incidents. But we have to declare a state of emergency in the construction industry so that we can begin to work on this. The government has to take it up. Right. And probably have a bill. Recently, Current passed the structural engineering practice bill. It was gazetted. And then we're hoping that by the time we begin to implement this, we'll begin to have changes.
All right, let me come in now.
I mean, we'll begin to have changes.
Engineer Onio, and take this to Engineer Wafa, because today it's a building, tomorrow it could be a road, a bridge. It would seem like this, you know, below standard mentality or culture pervades different areas, really. You construct a road today, and in a few days you begin to see the road falling apart, even without, you know, rigorous use. And, you know, you talked about that report from 2010, that it hasn't been implemented, if I got you correctly. In fact, the report on the Ikoyi building collapse of 2021, which Koren worked on, presented to the state government early 2022, only snippets of it are out. I know there was conversation about making it public, but I have searched. I have not seen that report. So for Engineer Wafa, who needs to, I mean, because we're talking about consequence management, what kind of heads need to roll, if you understand what I mean? Because there needs to be the right consequences. So we don't keep having this question of, you know, agencies not doing their job, lack of, you know, supervision. In fact, the statement originally was that this was not authorized, that the construction was not authorized. So who should be actually receiving not just the blame, but the consequence of, you know, this lack of doing their job, as it were?
Thank you. Before I answer your question, I want to address the issue you raised when you mentioned big companies handling projects in Nigeria, and they still collapse. They still have problems. Who are the big companies, by the way? I'll ask. These big companies, is the government monitoring their activities? One thing I do on my site, as soon as the project is initiated, first thing I do on my site is to ask the main contractor, who are the people that will speak the same language with me. What I say, so I use the word I normally use. I explain that speaking the same language with me, it means you have to have a correct registered engineer who will work with me. That's the person that can speak the same language with me. So if they don't have it, I give a written instruction that they must employ a Korean registered engineer. But the country is not supporting us, because some of them claim that it was illegal for me to even ask them to do that. They pay the workers, they have the right to select their workers, but we are monitoring the activities. Korean has the assignment to monitor the activities. If I represent Korean on my site, I must ensure that the person working with me must be Korean registered. And I want this to be implemented. I want government to assist Korean to ensure that this rule is adhered to in constructions on construction sites. Back to your question, if I remember, if I get to right.
What kind of heads need to...
Well, let me come to...
You see, the problem is that Hello?
Yes, Engineer Wafo, go ahead. You were going to answer the second part of Kadi's question.
Let me... Can he repeat the question?
About what kind of heads need to roll. He was saying that there needs to be consequences, obviously, when buildings collapse. In this sort of situation, what sort of, who would you be holding responsible? And who are those that you think who should be asked to resign or should get some punishment, you know, if there needs to be prosecution for what has happened?
Anyway, I think the appropriate authority to answer this question is Korean. But I'll tell you that we need government support to ensure that all these are implemented on construction sites. Korean has no power to prosecute, to ask contractor to stop work completely, or to deny a contractor continuous to continue the project.
Yes, when this sort of thing happens, who should be held responsible?
Well, if it happens, we normally carry out investigations. We normally carry out investigations, and when somebody is found guilty of not carrying out his or her duties appropriately as an engineer, Korean will take it up and punish the person. The person can lose his or her seal, that's his or her right to practice engineering in Nigeria. But when it involves foreigners, Nigeria government supposed to help us to implement it. We cannot do it alone. It's difficult for us to It's not possible for us to handle it.
So let me come in here now. Speaking of heads rolling, I've actually reached out to the relevant ministry in Lagos State, the Building Control Agency, for an official to speak on the regularity of this and perhaps provide an explanation. Let's hear from the part of Lagos State government, but we haven't particularly gotten a response. Let me come to you, Engineer Ojediran. Lagos is always on the spotlight because of the regularity of building collapses. And there may be, according to some engineers, quotes from some engineers, 30 to 40,000 construction sites in Lagos alone. Is this a problem of capacity? Does the state government, have the capacity to monitor and ensure compliance with building regulations in 30 to 40,000 construction sites?
And that was what I started saying earlier, that the projects are so much and the hands are so few. Apart from the capacity to even be able to oversee such projects, we also have the manpower that is not enough to go around. So we are asking that it's okay to ask, especially people who have this very big project, to pay an extra fee to help you engage consultants to oversee this project. I'm sure they will want to part with such money as against the amounts they will lose when they have such collapse. I mean, millions have gone down the drain. And then how much will it cost to engage a consultant, really?
In closing, if you were going to advise both building and government and builders and Nigerians generally, starting with you, Dr. Mwafo, what would you say in 30 seconds, please?
Thank you. I will say the government should ensure that Korean has the power to prosecute and deal with defaulters.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I will say that there should be a bill that empowers the right professionals to be able to carry out their responsibilities, to be able to go to sites, and then it won't be illegal. So there should be a bill that supports and that identifies these professionals not as a cap, the engineers. Let's have the structural engineers identified, because now they are in the center of this. If whatever you do, all professionals, whatever you do, if a structural engineer does not sign off on it, your structure will not stand. Right. So we need to focus on that. Let's start from there.
Thank you very much, Engineer Deborah Oni-Ojediran, National Vice President, Nigerian Institute of Structural Engineers, lecturer and former head of Department, Civil Engineering, Kogi State Polytechnic. Thank you for coming into the show.
Thank you for having me.
Engineer Dr. Cyril Nwafo, Structural Engineer and member, Building Collapse Prevention Guild. Thank you for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you very much.